Hello everybody, my name is Jason. I'm a second year engineering science student at the University of Toronto, and today I'll be talking about the course ESC102 Praxis 2. Today is December 22nd, 2021, and I will be going over a recap of the main course topics that were covered in Praxis 2, the major assessments that were a part of the course, and I will also go over some general pieces of advice and observations that I made when I was taking this course during last year winter term. So what is ESC 102? As I mentioned, it's a year one winter course in the engineering science program at Uoft. When I took the course in winter 2021, there were three course instructors, Professor Sheridan, Professor Irish, and Professor Asare. Professor Kinear was our professional language instructor, and Matthew Strohack was the lead studio instructor. As for the main course topics, a lot of them build off of Praxis 1's course topics. So at the very start, we talk about engineering and design, what they mean to us exactly, how our values fit into them, and what we see as our ideal balance. When we get into the different phases of this course, we also talk about connecting and interacting with communities, how to do that effectively and meaningfully, and in a way that is respectful and professional. We also talk about framing and scoping an engineering opportunity, how to write an RFP, also known as a request for proposal. And furthermore, in Praxis 1, we saw the FDCR design cycle, but we had a different opportunity for every stage of the cycle. In Praxis 2, we do FDCR again, but for a single opportunity this time. In this course, we also talk about prototyping, so low fidelity prototyping, the different kinds of prototypes, and what their purposes are. We also talk about how to deliver an effective design showcase in order to present all the work we've done during the term. As well, finally, we talk about reflecting on our individual design process, as it's something that's always evolving with the work that we do. It's always changing, and so it's important to realize that and see how your changes in perspective or your changes in your values even can affect your design process. So this is a nifty visual from the Praxis 2 course website last year, and it essentially shows the two major phases of the course. So the first phase is really about positioning your team and understanding what kinds of engineering design work you want to do and finding a community that you would want to work with. After consulting with your community, you would then write an RFP which highlights a specific engineering opportunity that a team of engineers could address. In phase 2, you're then required to select an RFP from another group. So basically what happens is every group writes an RFP. The teaching team selects a few that move forward to phase 2, and you're only allowed to select from those few. So your team selects an RFP to work with, and then you go through the whole FDCR process with this opportunity, and you show off your work at on two different occasions. So at beta, you would do a short presentation on what design concepts you're considering, and at the final design showcase, you would have selected one concept design and you would present it. You would also present all your justification to show why it's the design concept you chose. At the end of the course, each student puts together an engineer handbook, which is a reference for themselves for future design work. And it essentially builds upon all the design experience you've gained in first year throughout Praxis 1, Praxis 2, even your other courses or your extracurriculars. As for the assessments, I didn't mention the position statement, but this is also an individual assignment where you talk about what engineering and design mean to you, where they fit within your values, um, and uh, how you wish to perform engineering design work. As I mentioned in phase one, uh, you have to write a community profile, which essentially highlights several different opportunities for design work within the community. It talks about your community's values, maybe some history. It's just to give the reader an understanding of the community that you're working with. I already talked about the RFP. In phase two, we have our beta release and our design showcase, which I also have talked about already. And finally, the student engineer handbook. So I'd like to make some observations about the Online Praxis II experience that I had last year. The first thing I wanted to note was that connecting with stakeholders was definitely challenging, given that really we just needed to cold email or cold call people. It was really hard to sort of connect with these communities. It was also challenging as a team to be able to work effectively together in an online setting at times. Um, we have a lot of burnout from school. We're just sitting at our computers all day. Um, and, when you're feeling tired, especially later into the winter term, sometimes it just feels like, you don't have much energy. So your meetings feel like they have no purpose. It just feels like you schedule the meeting just so you have a meeting, but there's really no purpose to them. Something positive I thought that came out of phase one, though, was that the opportunities that were written about in the RFPs were generally quite diverse. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that there were some international opportunities. So we didn't feel restricted to communities belonging to, Toronto. We didn't feel like we were constricted to local communities. Now, the question is, were we prepared to work with these communities? Um, in particular, my team decided to work on an RFP where the community was from Liberia. So, at times we felt sort of disconnected. Like um, we didn't understand our community as well as we wanted to, and maybe this wouldn't have been an issue in previous iterations of Praxis 2, but I felt maybe some, uh, additional training would have been nice to supplement that. So some general tips for Praxis 2 and future design work that I'd like to talk about. First of all, I think good design work requires a strong understanding of the community you're designing for. Um, I guess maybe I could highlight this with an example. Um, in phase one, when my team was selecting a community to work with, I felt strongly about working with the Toronto Symphony because this is a community that I'm very familiar with. I know many individuals who are part of this community, and as a former musician, you know they're very close to what I used to do in the past, and so I felt like I was quite connected to that community, and I had a good understanding of what they value and what they would want out of a design. Second of all, a piece of advice would be to always start representing, prototyping, and testing as early as possible. You definitely don't want to leave it last minute. The third point I'd like to make is about the importance of telling a story. A design needs a story, and you can use a story to build the credibility and motivation behind your design. Fourth of all, this is more of a team thing. It's important to note that meeting time is always precious and you want to respect each other's time. So, meeting time should always be scheduled very precisely. It should be used wisely. It shouldn't be used for, simple tasks like brainstorming. Brainstorming like anybody could do like individually. It's not really, unless you're doing a special kind of brainstorming, obviously, but it might not always be the best use of meeting time. especially when you're on a time crunch. Anyways, before I end the presentation, I'd like to make some quick acknowledgements. So thank you so much to the course instructors, Professor Sheridan, Professor Irish, Professor Kinear, and Professor Asare for the course content and your instruction. I'd also like to thank my studio TAs, Lyndon, Richard, and Alan, for being super supportive during both phases of the course. You were always super helpful and super nice, so thank you. I'd also like to thank the two individuals whom I stole my Beamer template from. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thanks so much.